question, but before I do, I'd love to compliment you on a couple of things that I appreciated. While telling the global story that's been suppressed about Matewan and Blair Mountain, I like the way you go in and make some careful observations, almost private observations. As a dog owner and lover, I really appreciated things like, I think you said something like the dog was Moose, right? Moose. He
Right.
perked his ears at the question mark in her voice. And just the way you captured that, I'm sure those of us who have dogs all went, oh yes, we know exactly what that looked like. So thank you for those private observations. But my question is, you mentioned publishing the book or presenting the book on certain days of the year. Did you choose this particular year to publish? Because I think many of us would be remiss if we didn't recognize the topical relevance of the atrocities of this story. I mean, the racism, the prejudice, the greed, the power, the monopoly, the exploitation, leading to, as you call it, a land of fracture and feud. Certainly topical issues today. Did that have anything to do with your purpose in bringing the book out now?
I would say that originally I had the idea my first plan had been 2021 because it would be the 100-year anniversary, and I just couldn't finish it in time. And then we had to push to get it out in 2024, and I said I'd really like it to come out in 2024, not 2025. I think this is really important now. I think even more so because we're seeing there's a story that's been told of what Appalachia, especially Southern Appalachia in the South, is like that. And now we have more folks that are in power that were kind of elevated to be a voice of that, and I think aren't telling the right story, And I think this is the kind of story that really is an origin story that everyone should know about the region, and that they don't. And then on a broader, I can't plan these things, but yes, did I feel like that sooner is better? Absolutely. And did we push to have it come out in 2024 instead of 2025? Yes, absolutely. And I just think there's been, you even see it, you see it 100 years ago, you see the article that's in the book that the New York Times published, the op-ed about it, that just acts as if everybody in West Virginia and Appalachia is a primitive savage and that natural selection will take care of their violent bents on its own, which is just maddening. That it's crazy that they would publish that. But today, I mean, I still think that this is such a story that goes against, in a beautiful way, a lot of the lies told about Appalachia and the South in general. I think that folks still outside the region think of Appalachia as white and just Protestant and a certain kind of way. And this story says that's not it at all. So I was thinking about all of those things. And I think my agent and publisher and Jason and all the various people involved, have thought about all that.
Thank you.
I love the way you phrased some of your phrases and sentences and descriptions. And like Nikki read, that was a part that really stuck out to me. And I have a couple others that I want to read to you. And I just want to know, in your research and in talking to locals and historians, and did these phrases come out of their mouths, or were you swirling them around in your own head while you were listening to their stories? One of them was, better to smile and keep in mind Baldwins were grade A sons of bitches. And if putting them horizontal was a sin, it was also a public service. And the other one that I really liked, the other miner shrugged. A shut mouth swallows no lead. And another thing I want you to talk about too is the possibles bag. When I read that, I'm like, how have I not ever heard of that? And then I kind of dug around. I'm like, Nikki, I was, Googling all these things, but you did such a good job of describing what it was. I didn't have to Google it, but just talk a little bit about where did those phrases come from and how did you piece it all together?
I would say, like, when Sid is thinking that about, grade A sons of bitches and putting them horizontal, that wasn't something I read. I think that there's a mysterious thing with the way fiction works, and it's almost hard. You almost don't want to talk about it too directly as if you'll lose it. But you try to get into the spirit, into the head of someone. Like, I wouldn't have written from Sid's perspective if I didn't start to feel like I could try to get in his head and what the way he would think about it. And so sometimes it does feel weirdly like you're channeling or you're tapped in to something that comes not out of my head, but from somewhere back above or below, or comes to you, whether it's drawn up like tree roots or it comes down like lightning, or however you want to think about it. There are times when it seems like that, and that's where sometimes those phrases come from. I don't think I read that phrase, or the shut mouth swallows no lead. Seems like I couldn't have made it up. So maybe I did, but maybe I did. I don't know. One thing that helped me a lot with the way people spoke at the time was usually in even fiction of the time and in newspaper articles, stuff's kind of overdone or it's overly edited and it's not how they spoke. But court transcripts are really good because generally, whether they're depositions, transcripts, all that stuff, they're typed just how the people spoke, so you can kind of get it that way. So I think that helped with some of the phrasing and the syntax and all that. But yeah, I don't know where it always comes from. What was the third one? Oh, the possibles bag I did combine my research. And that's more of a frontiersman thing. And I was thinking about, I thought about the American Revolution a lot with the story. I think that the miners, to a large degree, thought of this was about civil rights. There had been a previous march a few years before, and their slogan had been for that one, and that one had been calmed down. Similar march had been calmed down, but it had been to establish the Constitution was their slogan, because they felt that the rights and liberties that the United States of America had been created to afford its citizens were not reaching this part of the world. They were not under the rule of the United States. They were under the rule of a private law that had everything else, had its teeth into everything, its claws into everything. And there were absolutely parallels to the American Revolution in their heads about how things were going. And so I think that that's where the possibles bag somehow, because that was a frontier thing. You think of Davy Crockett and the Kentucky Rifles and the Over Mountain Men, and that's really what, to a large degree, helped win the Civil War, were these homesteaders and woodsmen. And of course, Musa draws a lot of interest in the old frontiersmen, like I did as a kid, and all the old West gunfighters and stuff like that. So it kind of grew out of that when I came across it. Also, I've carried a bag that's, a modern version of a possibles bag that's loaded with everything I might need for pretty much my entire adult life. So it probably all stemmed from that a little bit. And there's not a whole lot of information on the possibles bag. I don't know how I came across it, somehow in research, and I found photos of guys standing, like this with their big old long Kentucky rifle and their possibles bag slung underneath their shoulder, and it just seemed to make a lot of sense.
Bryson, was there someone online? I saw a chat pop up.
No, I was just sending out to tell them that they could type in their questions if they needed to.
Okay. Another question in here? Or comment?
I know in the past there's been some momentum for maybe through the Mine Wars Museum to mark the path of the march. I wonder if you have information that would update us on the progress with that.
I think that's something they're still working on and doing monuments along the way at different points. They've certainly, they've marched it and they have redone it, just driving it and taking people to the different sites that are involved with the museum multiple times. So I think that is in the process, but I don't have specifics on exactly where it is. But I know that they're actively working on more things that will make it a little bit more direct so that people can follow it that much more and have places that where they can stop to see stuff. And it does seem like it's been really great. It seems like they've gotten a pretty good amount of support. It's not easy to necessarily run a museum that is not funded by, the federal government or by, they have to run a lot of the time, I think, from grant to grant, writing the grants, hoping to get the grants. Membership, if you guys are interested in becoming members, starts off really inexpensively and I think goes to a really great cause. And they've done such a good job. I was there. Somebody showed up on Make one day. This guy, Eddie, I can't remember his last name, but he brought in, it's only the second bandana known to have been at the Battle of Blair Mountain. And he just brought it to show everyone. And he was so moved by the museum and everything that he asked whether they would like to have it on display. And of course, they did. And then the other one is in the state archives. And in my event in Pittsburgh this week, somebody that wasn't at the event but wrote to the bookstore and said it was her great grandfather's bandana, and so I signed a book for her grandmother. So yeah, it's just it's a real living history. There's still artifacts that are around that are in people's drawers and all that. I met at my event in Beckley the daughter-in-law of C.E. Lively, who was not only one of the assassins of Sid Hatfield, he was the spy who ran the restaurant in Macon. He had been out in Colorado in those mines and he was a labor spy. This was a thing. Hired by the Baldwin Spelts, there were labor spies. And she has the pistol that he used to shoot Sid Hatfield. And I said, have you thought about bringing it to the museum? And she said, I don't want to go to Macon. I'm scared. And in fact, she went 20 years ago to the reenactment, and she didn't know that the MC of the event singled her out in the crowd and didn't do it in a bad way. I mean, it was just in the interest of the history, but she did not, you could feel the bad vibes around her, and it made her, and now I think she's nearly 80, and so she especially doesn't feel comfortable going into town. So it's really a living history, I mean, this is, it just goes to show, 100 years ago isn't that long ago. So
Taylor, have you traveled around and done book signings and talks and all that outside of West Virginia? What's been the reception outside the state?
I think folks' minds are blown that this could have happened, that something of this scale could have happened, and that folks don't know about it. It really makes you re-examine the narratives that you've been told. And I think they're really kind of empowered by it, especially most of my events have been in the South and in Appalachia. And it's a place where sometimes I think folks feel like the rest of the country and the rest of the world has a tendency to look down on. Even the word redneck is one of the few pejoratives that is still okay to some degree to use. And I think even in the whole South, there's now starting to be this momentum to kind of re-own the word, that like redneck actually didn't start out as, I mean, it's like a bad word at the time, but it meant something very different than what it means today. And wanting to like re-own that word and that history and say there's a whole alternative origin story to this that was buried and suppressed. And so I think it, to some degree, has been empowering, and then people's minds are blown. And it's also, this all happens Battle of Blair Mountain, I think, was 3 or 4 months after the Tulsa massacre, which is another really historically significant event that was very well buried for a long time. And so when you put these back to back right about 100 years ago, people are.
What are you working on now? What are you working on now?
I'm working on, well, I have just on Monday, I got confirmation that my next novel, we accepted the offer from my same press. So that's going to come out in 2026. But I'm not working on that at the moment. What I've been working on is a book that has, I think, a lot of relevance to this one, but it is set on the Okefenokee Swamp, which is basically in my backyard where I grew up. It's the largest blackwater swamp on the continent. Incredible place. And now, because of a change under the previous administration that changed the definition of headwaters underneath one of the environmental acts, they're building a titanium dioxide mine right on the border of the swamp, which the environmental impact of, given all the scientists that have studied it, is horrible for the swamp and for the surrounding communities. The swamp brings in 600,000 visitors a year and is an evergreen resource. The mine, which would be 10,000 acres, has a projected 20-year range. So it starts to feel a lot like the history I've been looking that West Virginia was under, right? This out-of-state company. It's an Alabama company. That in the book it's Texas company, but so it involves both the mine guards on one side for this mine and environmental protesters who are trying to stop the construction of the mine. But it's very relevant because this is all happening right now. And I started with 3 short stories about it, and the first one just won the Ron Rash Prize in fiction, and Ron is one of my heroes, so that made me feel really good, and will be hopefully a help for the book moving forward. But it's really informed by all the history that I learned of West Virginia and Appalachia, and we're kind of seeing it happen again right in my own backyard of where I grew up. So this is my way to, try to tell that story and stop the bulldozers that can happen.
Yeah. I think we have a question. Bryson? Someone chatted a question.
Yes, we do. Sorry, it didn't pop up on my screen. Kayla Jones asked, do you think the West Virginia school system leaves this out of West Virginia studies class in 8th grade on purpose? Is it the state trying to rewrite history?
From talking to folks, there's a lot of coal money on school boards and at a high level that would rather not quite have this history told, and so it's skimmed over in large part because of that. But I don't have evidence for that, but that's other folks that I trust who are scholars or who work with the museum or work at different universities. That's been the story to me, is that those forces still have a huge influence, and that's why it's glossed over to a large degree. And that labor history in general isn't really taught that well in the United States. And unions in the state I grew up in and a lot of the Deep South are very much villainized to this day. And I think that there has to be a reason. Part of the reason for that is that we're not really taught in school and what the real history is behind it and what the conditions were like. I mean, if Mother Jones was working against child labor, there were 12-year-olds and younger working in these mines at this time. I mean, it's almost unthinkable now. The breaker boys, the trapper boys, horrible injuries, it's crazy to imagine, and how important it was that kind of thing was changed, so that, kids today go to middle school, they don't go into a mine. where they're at risk of getting run over by a mule or losing fingers in a conveyor belt or something like that. And that was absolutely the history, not just here. I mean, textile mills in the South, and silver mines out west. I mean, you had a lot of this happening. You know, I think America at a time was just running so headlong. You know, it's like I've heard a historian describe it as like a young child that's immature and just running along at so full speed and not worrying about what destruction it causes as it runs forward to become a world power and all the wreckage that is in the wake of that. But I wish that we'd learned our lesson a little better, because today it sometimes seems that we haven't.
Sorry, I keep walking up to see if there was any other chats pop up. Were we good? Bryson, any other questions from virtual team?
Yes, hold on just 1 second. We have Jody here. And Jody, I just unmuted you.
Hi, Jody.
Thank you. Hi, Taylor. I really enjoyed your book. Talking about the contemporary influence of coal companies in West Virginia, are you familiar with Elaine McMillan Sheldon, the film King Coal? I highly recommend it. Yes.
I didn't know her name. I just watched it. I'd watched it like the night it came out on PBS. I thought it was beautiful.
Yes. Okay. I just thought it was really relevant to the conversation about the question of, you know, its enduring legacy in the state. So.
Absolutely. And as identity, you know, I talk to people in other regions who say kind of don't really understand the grip that the pride, I think, in the identity of being a miner that West Virginia and anywhere that there are coal fields that groups have, you know, and that gets passed down through families. And, you know, Jason, I saw that shine through Jason from, you know, for forever. And I felt like that film really captured that, you know, coal as almost an identity, the way it's passed down from generation to generation. That is a beautiful film, King Coal. It's PBS POV documentaries, and it just came out in the last month, I believe, or the last 6 weeks. I think I watched it in June.
Great. Any other?
I was curious, in all your research, did you meet with people from the actual?
Not until more since the book has come out. A lot of folks have come to events, and I got to meet a lot of them. You know, now, like in southern West Virginia, most of the union members are older. It's pension, you know, because there's not as much coal mining, and the coal mines aren't unionized anymore. But it's been really neat to have so many folks show up and bring like their old helmets or their old stuff from the mine, show me things that they lunch pails and all that kind of stuff. And of course I had gone down into like the mine in Beckley that they have, that all the tour guides are old miners and stuff like that. The other thing that's been neat is outside the region, folks turning out from other unions. So I've had firefighters come, UAW members, like pipe fitters union, electrical workers, you know, a lot of whom actually know this story through union conferences where folks from all different trades come together and through their journals and stuff. So that's a whole world that I didn't really probably know quite as well when I was writing the book, because I was looking 100 years ago. But a lot of people that do know this story, and it's been neat to see sometimes folks come out that you just wouldn't think of as like big readers as much, and they love it because they know this story, and they want it told, and they know it because of union history and labor history that's not taught in school, but certainly is if you're part of a union, you know, and much more, especially officers and unions and stuff like that.
Other questions? Comments? Anybody here? Online? Virtual?
I will say,
Okay.
I think it would make a great film, or somebody has got to put this on the big screen, because May 1 really ends where Rednecks begins.
Yeah.
Apparently John Sayles would have liked to have done the Battle of Blair Mountain, but they just didn't have the budget for the film. I mean, it was an independent film at the time. And I think it would be great for a mini-series too, but we'll see what happens. We have a film agent working on it, but I know all that's such a long shot, you know.
We need
We'll
to
see what
connect you to
happens.
Jennifer Garner, maybe.
Yes. Yes. If anybody has any connections, you know, put it in front of them, because this story needs to be out there. I mean, a novel can only go so far. And you know, I think the novel is done well, but it's not going as far as a film would, or a mini series or something like that. That it seems almost like, you know, well, I certainly have a cinematic. Any book I write, I see
You see
what
as you do.
happens. That's how I see a lot of it, and I certainly saw that here. And it'd be great if they could use some of the local communities like they did. I know it was May 1 wasn't filmed in May 1 for a couple of different reasons. You know, the at that time the train depot wasn't there, and the flood wall had
Probably
been put
because they
up.
didn't have an amphitheater.
Yeah, probably. I forget where it was filmed, but you know, it was. I just think it would be great, and it would bring people to the region too that are interested in the history. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with that.
Well, thank you so much for coming all the way. You were a little further north, so you were in Pittsburgh, came down to see us, but originally he was going to join us virtually, and then I was able to do it in person. So we really appreciate you making the effort to do that.
Thank you for having me.
Got a couple little thank yous here
thank
for
you very
you.
much.
Are you driving or flying back?
I'll drive back tomorrow morning and then fly out at like 1 o'clock.
Okay, so there's reading material.
Okay,
More about
awesome.
West Virginia.
Thank you very much. I saw when I was touring in May, the posters were all over at all the bookstores and coffee shops I went to and stuff. People had the posters up for the book club, and I was like, let's try to come in person, you know. So thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, so Justin, I'm so not used to wearing bib overalls, so I just caught a glimpse of myself over there. And that took me. Although I'm becoming a believer, because look at all these pockets.
They're
amazing.
amazing.
I mean, they're kind of handy. We might all need to have a bib overall brigade and just start wearing bib overalls. And that might be a good thing. But so just in closing, let me tell everyone our next book is Don't Tell 'Em You're Cold, a memoir of poverty and resilience. And this is by Catherine Manleach, also from Southern West Virginia. And before you leave, if you want to sign up, Sophia back at the desk at the door can go ahead and register you, and you could take the book with you if you want, so you don't have to wait on it to be mailed to you. So that's an option, but it is a beautiful survival story too. And a couple of other things. I mean, we have in the store, as you can see, we are wall to wall West Virginia. So we had pepperoni rolls, and the lava cupcakes were supposed to be, what were they supposed to be, Natalie? Okay, they're supposed to be coal cupcakes, and then I don't know what happened, but I think they tasted good. They tasted better than they look. So please grab a cupcake, and then the brownies. They're all from this and that bakery next door. But we also had the pepperoni rolls, which of course you know was pepperoni rolls were carried into the mines, and we have tons of pepperoni roll paraphernalia around. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts. Maybe you might need one to go back. But in any case, you're welcome to shop here. Amanda can take care of you if there's anything that you would like. What else am I missing? Team New South Media, anything? Natalie, you keep me straight. Did I forget anything? Oh, the next book club is November 6th. Yeah, November 6th. And she will be here too. So again, thank you so much. If you all have questions and you want to stick around and talk, I'm sure you will answer questions.
She grew up in a coal camp in Burnsville, which was.
You're not talking into a mic.
Oh. Kathy Manley, the author of Don't Tell 'Em You're Cold, grew up in a coal camp in Logan County between Logan and Man, which was where I grew up too. And this book just makes me very emotional because it reminds me of my heritage. My grandpa came from Hungary. His whole family came from Hungary. He was a coal miner starting at age 12 and then became a milkman. I could have cousins everywhere. I don't know. Just kidding. But in Logan County, where I grew up, they did teach this in the schools because we were proud of it. And I'm proud of it. And that's why it makes me emotional. So thank you for writing about it.
Very
Thank you.
I think it depends on the teacher that you have.
Yes. Say it again.
It's not on there. I think it depends on the teacher that you have because we were required to go see the rate audition for extra credit. So it wasn't tough. And she went to school here.
Good.
Good.
That's good. I think I see some other chats, Bryson. Am I saying that? I'm sure it's people saying you should wear bib overalls more often.
No, Vanessa just wanted to say that this has been a wonderful experience, that she really enjoyed it, and say thank you to West Virginia Living.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, thank you all. Thanks so much. Thank you. Bye.